Hey everybody, if you're looking at the screen, I have a slave wanted or a runaway slave ad that was posted for Harriet Jacobs by her master after she ran away. Her master, James Norcom. We're going to talk a lot more about Jacobs on Tuesday because I have an assignment, a writing assignment next Tuesday, which is what? The 30th, something like that. Anyway, and y'all are going to have a writing assignment based on the material from Jacobs. But for now, what I want to do is talk about and underline what you learned in the really terrific class that Sherry Salisbury offered on last Tuesday, the 23rd of January. So two things first. Sherry's somebody you should get to know. She's terrific. She's very accessible, very responsive to student requests. She's someone you should utilize, and she's very expert. She's just a fantastic resource for history students. And I have to say, more and more history students are realizing that. The history professors certainly have realized that. I think every methods class is using Sherry for these assignments. But use her, utilize her. That's what she wants. She really enjoys it. She embraces it. That's kind of a long term. Short term, one student has visited with Ahmed during his office hour. Another student has made an appointment with Ahmed on Monday. I can't urge you strongly enough to meet with him, especially now that you've gotten your first set of papers back. Now, the papers that Ahmed graded are already sent back. I have about 6 that I need to send back, which I'll do today. So he's quicker than I am too. Um, with some of those papers, we gave you a chance to redo the basic mistakes for a higher grade. But if you have any questions about this citation style and what we're asking you to do, sometimes just a 5 or 10 minute conversation across the desk from somebody makes all the difference in the world. And it's worth your time. And Ahmed is very flexible. He's more than willing to meet with students. My time is a little bit tighter this semester because I'm chairing a search which has been very, very consuming. We're trying to bring in at least one new historian into the department. And so I've been very, very busy this semester. I will meet with you during my office hours, but I have to say, Ahmed is available. He's quite available, and take advantage of him, especially if you have any questions about the technical nature of the historical citation process that we have started this semester. I want to talk about citation. I only realized in the last year or so how important correct historical citation is. It seems really picky, and it is picky in a way, and it's picky for a reason. But it's not really hard. It's just you have to learn how to do it right. And once you learn how to do it right, it's not a big deal. It's easier than a mathematical formula. This is the style, and the little seagull shows you that style, and just copy that style. One of the common mistakes students make, and it kind of drives me crazy, is they don't capitalize the titles of. I'm not saying that everyone that's listening to this podcast made that mistake, but just these basic mistakes are problematic. And the reason for that is what I've learned about historical citation and the significance of it. It's the beginning of historical literacy. Once you realize how to cite something and where to cite something, and under what context you cite either a primary or secondary source, you are really on your way into historical fluency and understanding what historians do, how they do it, and why they do it. So I know for many of you it is super technical and not very exciting, but I don't care. It's something that you have to know if you're going to be a successful historian. Now, some of y'all aren't historians, you're not history majors, but I still think every discipline has its citation styles, and just knowing the importance of citation will take you a long way in your college career. Now, why do historians cite? Okay, that's what I'm going to talk about next. By the way, I'm going to post a couple of podcasts, and I have an assignment for you that's going to build on Sherry's assignment. Okay, why do historians cite? Now, when I was an undergrad, I always thought that you had to cite either primary or secondary material, so the professor wouldn't think that you were cheating, that you were showing them that you'd actually done the reading, that kind of a thing. Well, that's not really what citation is about. That's not what it's designed for. Historical citation is designed to create a paper trail for other historians to know where you got your sources. And that is very, very important. It was always important, but it's especially important now when we live in an era of accusations of fake news. What's real, what's not real, what's opinion, what's fact. So historical citation is even more important in 2017, or more important in 2017 than it's ever been, because there's so many charges and counter charges that are being thrown around these days by the left and the right. And so how do you know what's true? How do you know what kind of argument is based on some kind of foundation of evidence? And so it's really important for historians and other disciplines as well. It's not just historians that do this. Other disciplines do it. They have a slightly different style, but it's really basically the same idea. The point of citation is to let your reader know where you got your evidence that you're using to make your argument. Okay, now an example of a lie, for instance, could be a slave narrative made up by someone named, let me think of Tom Brady. And so Tom Brady was a runaway slave, and he went to the North, and he wrote a slave narrative about how great slavery was. And I don't know why he would have run away if slavery was great, but let's put that aside for now. And it turns out that there's no Tom Brady. It's just some pro-Southern sympathizer wrote this book, and it just turns out to be propaganda instead of truth. So the reason that we need to cite Tom Brady is a historian that looks at this pro-slavery, supposed pro-slavery document can go, who's Tom Brady? He wrote this book that defends slavery. Well, I'm going to go look at that book, and I'm going to see if that book is true. I'm going to look and see if there's a historical record for Tom Brady. Did he really exist? Historians have done that for Harriet Jacobs. I think I told you that there are historians that don't believe that Jacobs has told the full truth in her book, or that it was completely made up. But the more historians have looked into Jacobs, like with this Juan ad, the more that they understand that she existed. We know when she was born. We know who owned her. We know she had children. Let me put it like this. Every bit of evidence that historians have discovered about Harriet Jacobs has supported her story, and we have found no evidence that has undermined her story. So I don't know if every word that Jacobs said in her her book, her memoir, is true, but certainly we do know that there was a Harriet Jacobs, that she was owned by this guy named James Norcom, that she had 2 children. We've been able to verify that. Now, let's go back to this Tom Brady who writes this pro-slavery. He's a runaway slave who says that his master was kind to him. Well, the historian would want to know who this Brady was. They'd want the citation. They'd look at the footnote. And then they would start doing research on Tom Brady. Did he exist? Well, no, there's no Tom Brady in the 1830s. It turns out, I'm making this all up. It turns out that this pro-slavery narrative was propaganda. So, to get back to the main point, this is the idea of citation. You're leaving a paper trail for other historians to be able to verify what you said is backed up by evidence, okay? That's the key to footnotes, that historians can verify that what you said was backed up by evidence, and then historians can go and check that evidence and see if they find it convincing, okay? In the case of Jacobs, historians have found it very convincing. In the case of this story that I made up by Tom Brady, historians would not have found it very convincing because it doesn't exist. So this is the point of footnotes. This is the point of citation. So historians can go and check what what they're reading, that they can verify that it's based on evidence that exists in the world. And if they want to push it a little bit further, that they can look at this evidence and then they can start examining the evidence itself to see if it makes sense, if it holds up. So this is what citation is for. In the essence of citation is for to create a paper trail, and think of doing historical work as think of it as a detective story, which it is. This part of it's the really fun part. That the historian detective can go back and look at the evidence and try to discern the truth value of the evidence. Okay, so that's number one. And then in number two, I'll talk about in my second podcast for today.